While the audit learned to score, an older chase kept humming in rooms without clocks. Psi cohorts who trained in bunkers and left with headaches and non-disclosure agreements. Their rosters, the leak shows, were quietly cross-tabbed against NH-Dh7 carriers at higher-than-chance rates. No comic book powers, just a subset that leans slightly better on certain days, enough for operations to keep feeding the pipeline. Selection felt procedural and strange. Recruits sat at green pads under humming vents, sketching targets sealed in other rooms, nudging random event generators with stare-and-breathe drills, narrating impressions while monitors marked timestamps. Success lived in small deltas, sketches landing inside silhouettes, z-scores edging above expectation. In the logs, a handful of IDs ticked more boxes more often. No one told them why those boxes mattered. Handlers called those days bump days. Notes read, Subject S, 14 exhibits persistent micro-PK elevation. Recommend extended protocol. When we overlaid anonymized IDs with NH-Dh7 positives from the audit schema, the match rate cleared chance by an inch, not a mile. Red team statisticians flagged expectancy effects, handlers logging wins with more enthusiasm than misses. But in blinded repeats run off-site, NH-Dh7 carriers still leaned higher than peers by that same stubborn inch. The rule that shaped everything arrived the hard way: never talk about bloodlines. A former handler, steady voice, careful verbs, told us the moment they learned it. A trainee found a redacted casualty printout left on a shared printer. A surname matched her grandmother's. Beside it, the old NH shorthand. She refused tasking the next morning. In the incident report, a supervisor wrote, "Asset unresponsive following exposure to NH pedigree indicator. Recommend rotation." Performance dipped whenever lineage entered the room. Attrition spiked when someone connected the dots. The bunker files keep a ledger of those human cracks. A quiet top performer was told against policy that his maternal line aligned with resilience cohorts. He lasted 3 more weeks. Another subject aced a perception week, then saw the word step in a stray slide at a debrief, and spent the next session staring at paper until the clock ran out. A psych note put it gently: identity interference correlates with disclosure of pedigree status. Translation: tell them it runs in families, and the story eats the skill. Meanwhile, the doctrine staggered between 2 motives: cultivate perception or recruit ballast. People who bend but don't break when settings go gray and weird. Budget lines toggled quarterly. Operational outputs, one slide. Resilience sourcing the next. The same chairs, the same drills, 2 stories depending on who needed the headcount. Here's the part that shoved the narrative off the table. A pathogen scare rolled through a mountain training cycle. Fevers, fog, the kind of illness that usually knocks people flat for a week. Several NH-Dh7 positives rebounded in 3 days. Bloodwork sketched atypical inflammatory curves. A clinic note read, atypical neuroimmune modulation observed. Recommend longitudinal monitoring. So I didn't explain that. Resilience did. And the audit's cluster, seated near neuromodulator and immune response loci, suddenly had a purpose operations could say aloud in the right rooms. From there, the training decks shifted tone without losing modules. Less talk of signal acquisition, more of operational hardiness under contest conditions. The same perception drills stayed in, because myths recruit. A campus flyer promised cognitive perception research that looked like psychology and felt like a screen. Inside the lineage module, the audit standardized taught examiners how to ask about maternal indices and step origin echoes, without ever saying family. Unbeknownst to the trainees, polygraph banks absorbed those prompts years before the rebrand. The question that cut KS first session, "Have you concealed step ancestry?" wasn't an outlier. It matched a lineage slide titled Non-Heritable Cluster Standardization, later mirrored in allied decks. The rebrand had sanded the label. It hadn't touched the levers. The files also document ceilings the myth refuses to admit. Effect sizes on micro-PK and target description hover near statistical comfort. Replications fail as often as they nudge forward. Handlers record headaches, sleep disruption, windows closing in the mind after week 6. Psych notes ride the fence. Elevated stress responsivity in subset correlating with NH-Dh7 classification, causality unresolved. A colder memo follows. Attrition acceptable, maintain cadence. People cycle out. The model asks for more. A micro-story lands like a pin dropping. A recruit in a windowless room, palms damp on green paper, sketches a bridge. The sealed target is a cup. He laughs, then stares. The monitor gives a neutral thank you. 2 sessions. Later, a recovery drill swaps in breath pacing, visual noise, heart rate variability on screen. He nails the downshift in 5 minutes. The note reads, rapid return to baseline, schedule for extended hardening. The bridge sketch won't make a slide. The bounce back will. Meanwhile, crosstabs tightened around myth-adjacent temptation. A cluster analysis flagged slightly elevated consistency on perception tasks among NH-Dh7 positives. Operations red tilt as destiny. Red team reviewers underlined confounds, expectancy, handler bias, uneven environments. The reply came stamped, acknowledged, proceed, resilience priority. Psi kept its seat because it filled chairs. Resilience drove the bus because it filled mission briefs. K found his file years after the denial and underlined the sentence that binds these rooms to the audit. Assets with confirmed NH-Dh7 classification demonstrate marginal performance elevation and increased resilience potential. Disclosure correlates with attrition. The program had measured its own fear. Tell people the truth and they walk. Don't tell them, and they'll sit for the next drill that looks like science and feels like selection. The bunker files don't sell wonder. They sell process. How a sticky note from the late 1960s became a screening doctrine. How an ancient regulatory echo gave a modern pipeline a pedigree. How a pathogen curve turned Psi lore into wellness language. How lineage questions slipped into polygraphs under a non-heritable banner. And how a handful of human inches, steadier hands after a fever, a sketch that leans closer to a shape, were enough for a bureaucracy to build a machine that still hums when the room is dark and the pencils are lined just right. Immunity, pathogens, and the cleaners. The pivot from perception to resilience didn't arrive with a headline. It seeped in through clinic notes that sounded like weather. In the late 2000s, biodefense working groups started circulating briefs on atypical host responses to neurotropic agents. In the margins of those PDFs, the same 3 characters kept appearing: NH-Dh7. No talk of telepathy, just a pattern of who steadied first after the fever. A field doctor flagged it in a mountain training cycle. A flu-like illness ran hot through a dozen recruits. Several NH-Dh7 positives rebounded in 3 days. Their inflammatory markers traced curves that didn't match the cohort's norm. The note read, atypical neuroimmune modulation observed. Recommend longitudinal monitoring. The recommendation became a protocol, then a policy. Meanwhile, something else moved in the open that looked like housekeeping. A unit the logs call the cleaners began collecting swabs at scenes where policy said they were collecting fingerprints. Processing rooms after protest arrests. Crash scenes before public works arrived. The forms listed environmental hygiene sampling. The chain of custody barcodes in the leak told another story. The swabs routed to the same contractor labs that processed NH-Dh7 screens. Here's where the kit lists make their case. The cleaners carried luminol and latent print powder, standard fare, and transport media optimized for RNA stability, the kind used when you care if viral fragments survive the ride. Photos show blue-gloved techs wiping benches like they were chasing a spill. Intake logs tagged those same kits for respiratory panels plus resilience markers. A field note we verified through matching header hashes reads, collect for respiratory panel plus resilience indices. Do not brief locals on second pass. The second pass pinged a familiar endpoint. Biodefense annexes, careful on the surface, got blunt in footnotes. Variant constellations near neuromodulator genes and immune response loci, echoes of that conserved cluster in Steppe and Anatolian datasets, showed up in risk tables labeled cohort recovery trajectories. The logic clicked for operations. If certain bodies return to baseline faster when environments get toxic or weird, you want those bodies in places where toxicity and weirdness live. Collateral arrived with friendly fonts. Employers rolled out voluntary health optimization screens, heart rate variability, sleep cycles, and tucked into a cheek swab, stress resilience biomarkers. Declining meant a gentle nudge from HR about team culture. Declining twice meant your promotion cycle slipped a quarter. Hospitals hosted community pathogen preparedness fairs with on-site readiness panels. A turnstile clicked. The audit's pipes hummed. One nurse declined and paid for it. 12 years on nights, she'd signed every form under fluorescent lights. The cheek swab clause wouldn't open in her portal. She wrote back, decline. 2 days later, administrative leave, pending compliance review. An arbitration clause she didn't remember agreeing to appeared in her employee profile. She signed the NDA to get her shifts back. Then she forwarded us the redacted header stamps. They matched contractor servers in. The leak to the minute. A lab across town pushed on the model with data that stung. When they controlled for air quality, toxin exposure, and baseline stress, things that bend immune systems without touching DNA, the NH-Dh7 signal thinned. Environmental confounders likely drive observed resilience differentials, their report said. The audit acknowledged the finding, then scaled anyway. The reply cited operational necessity and convergence with allied models. Because while that was happening here, a mirror was forming overseas. Coalition sharing widened the shoulder on biometric roads, already built for fingerprints and faces. Liaison offices wrapped derived genomic indicators into packets labeled forensic and health protective. A codebook translated NH-Dh7 into allied synonyms and kept the feature vector intact. Neuromodulator adjacency, immune response echoes, an epigenetic age proxy if genotype was missing, and a kinship downweight that let the net stay wide. In the field, the cleaners treated second-pass swabs like mop-up. A downtown protest ended with barricades and bleach. After the zip ties, they wiped benches and took air samples for safety. An hour later, the barcodes lit up the same contractor endpoint used by the audit. Out west, a crash scene brought sheriffs, federal jackets, and a cleanup crew that moved faster than city sanitation. The invoice said environmental remediation. The lab intake logged resilience panel, expedited. K saw the wellness language creeping toward his family. His kid's school sent home a gifted readiness form with a new checkbox for optional stress profile. He left it blank. A counselor called the next day to assist with completion. He asked for the protocol. She sent a flyer with no IRB number and a dead link. He declined twice. A recruiter booth labeled service readiness showed up at career day a week later. Red team memos inside the leak tried to hold a line. NH-Dh7 taxonomy ambiguity increases civil exposure under discrimination frameworks, one warned. It also noted lack of causal mechanism in resilience claims. The recommendation: pause deployment until taxonomy and mechanism align. The decision: proceed under revised nomenclature. The pipes didn't care which words rode their labels. They carried whatever fit. On the industry side, a contractor demoed pathogen resilience mapping to insurers, floating polygenic risk scores and epigenetic clocks, DNA image acceleration, as proxies for toughness. The slide put a gradient over a map. The pitch reframed preparedness as a premium. If your markers say you bounce, your rate goes down. If they don't, it goes up. Actuarial math with a lineage shadow. The cleaners didn't invent the audit. They crystallized it. A swab sold as sanitation becomes a lineage lookup. A wellness fair sells consent like a raffle. Opt-out means you still get scored, just without a sticker. The immunity chapter doesn't prove destiny in a gene. It shows a system eager to treat fragments of biology as fate, then deploy that fate wherever a spreadsheet says it's useful. The coalition mirror. While that was unfolding at home, a mirror took shape overseas. The leak shows NH-Dh7 didn't stay American. It slipped into allied systems under new names and old agreements. Five Eyes liaison nodes, those quiet rooms where biometrics already move, added a feature column without changing the furniture. IDENT 1 in the UK. PRUM-style gateways in Europe. Interpol biometric pipelines that were built for fingerprints and faces. The words on the envelope stayed careful, forensic and health protective. The payload learned a new trick. Here's the route the headers trace. A US contractor domain pushed a resilience cohort digest to a liaison mailbox in Canberra, CC'd to Ottawa and London. The subject line read, NH Class 7 standardization. Not NH-Dh7. NH Class 7. Attached, a codebook that translated our non-heritable cluster 7 into allied synonyms field for field. AU and UK, NH Class 7. CA, NH-Dh7. NZ, R7. The mapping table turned variables into phrasebook entries. Kinship underscore downweight became KDW. Epigenetic underscore age underscore proxy became EAP. You could send a score built in Virginia to Victoria and never touch the math. Unknown to most of the public, those corridors already carried DNA traces in limited forms. Crime scene kinship checks, disaster victim ID, missing persons. The coalition didn't need a new road, it widened the shoulder. A joint memo in the archive spells it out. Derived genomic indicators permissible under existing biometric MOUs when bundled with forensic submissions. If a cheek swab wrote a lawful packet, the derived features could hitch a ride. The legal framing felt narrow. The implementation felt broad. We heard it from a second whistleblower, an allied bioinformatician who sat too close to the plumbing. She watched the schema roll out across 2 agencies. It wasn't hidden, she said. It was normalized. Her team received a JSON spec that laid out the feature vector, neuromodulator adjacent SNPs, immune response echoes, an epigenetic age proxy when genotypes were missing, and that kinship downweight that kept the net wide while the FAQ said non-heritable. The test payloads matched our leak's fields character for character. She didn't need the crosswalk to translate. The fields already spoke the same language. While that was happening in London conference rooms and Canberra cubicles, another industry circled: insurance. A multinational pitched a workforce vitality product to a government customer. The deck showcased resilience indices, derived from polygenic risk scores and epigenetic clocks, DNA image acceleration glowing on a gradient. No raw genotypes, they said, just wellness. A discount if your profile trended favorable. A surcharge if your proxy aged too fast. Actuarial rates dressed in neutral math, built on inputs the audit had taught to travel. A cable in the archive lands like a punch. An allied ministry asks the US to withhold NH-Dh7 positive asylum referrals under public order considerations. The phrasing is clinical. The subtext isn't. Don't send us the ones you've tagged volatile. Coordinate on the ones you tagged resilient. An attached policy note cites alignment with coalition readiness frameworks. A human life reduced to a field that travels well. The polygraph echo crosses borders too. A training deck from an allied service includes a lineage module nearly identical to ours. Prompts barely change. Have you concealed step origin maternal indices? Have you been approached due to resilience cohort alignment? The same questions, different flags on the lanyards, calibrated to keep non-heritable as a shield while pressing on mitochondrial lines like a bruise. We tested the leak skeleton against public procurement because theater breaks under daylight. A forensic feature extraction module. Notice in one country listed KDW and EAP, the same abbreviations the crosswalk used. An anonymized biometric exchange log from another jurisdiction produced header hashes that collided with the liaison messages in our archive. Separate sources, same spine. Red team memos on both sides warned about the same thing: classification ambiguity, genetic discrimination optics, linkage attack surface. The sign-offs matched too, acknowledged. Proceed under revised nomenclature. A micro-story stitches the coalition into family life. A couple in Auckland sat with a broker to finalize a life policy. The agent offered a discount for biometric vitality screening. They declined the cheek swabs. The quote came back higher than the online calculator. When they asked why, the broker cited aggregate resilience regionals. Their postal code overlapped a pilot catchment for coalition metrics. Geography filled in for genotype when the program needed a backdoor. Meanwhile, liaison calendars set a rhythm. Biometric feature governance, joint, one invite read. Agenda items included normalize nomenclature, expand permissible derived indicators, and align public messaging. The minutes never said NH-Dh7 on a first line. The attachments did, tucked into schema diffs and sample payloads. A comment one engineer forgot to strip reads, add NH-Class7 to Interpol template when partner readiness achieved. The next meeting's title replaced when with post. Back channel, the allied bioinformatician sent a last note before she went dark. They're using our caution as proof of maturity. She meant the way careful footnotes, non-heritable, proxies, wellness, became evidence the system was responsible. Inside the pipes, kinship stayed downweighted, not gone. Epigenetic age stood in for genotype when spit wasn't in the bag. The crosswalk turned a US acronym into a coalition habit. And the mirror did what mirrors do. It returned our gaze, slightly delayed, perfectly aligned. The coalition chapter doesn't prove intention beyond what the memos admit. It proves preference. If a feature might offer an edge in gray zone contests, tag it, share it, and teach every examiner to ask the same softened question. The rest of the story waits where this one began. In the dirt, where a misread line and a careful appendix became scaffolding for a machine that learned to move without saying its name out loud. The dig that shouldn't matter, but did. 3 shovelfuls into a trench on a windswept ridge. A grad student misread a bone. That's where this thread starts. The dig log, typed on an Olivetti in the 1960s, called the osteology, anomalous, possible non-human elements. It was bait for funding. In the margin, a pencil note, retain for NH cross-refs. A flourish for a grant became a footnote for an intel brief. The word stuck to the bones like dust. Years later, the line got photocopied into a classified digest on unconventional biology. The analyst needed texture. The dig's non-human phrase slid under a header titled Anomalous Osteology Prehistory. Across town in the 1970s, a crash file logged tissue cross-reactivity panels that didn't map to standard controls. 2 accidents, an overstated dig note and a lab quirk, collided inside a shared glossary. NH hardened into non-human, then traveled. By the early 2000s, better tools met old bones. The same ridge yielded more samples. Micro-CT, osteometrics, and full comparative datasets stripped the mystery. Verdict: fully human. The anomalies were rare developmental variants, unusual cranial sutures, ephemeral torsion beyond the mean. The public paper corrected the record. The classified annex didn't. The glossary migrated NH to Non-Heritable and kept it wired to the audit. Here's the chain of error in the leak's receipts. Academic hype turned a marginal note into a headline. Intel shorthand repackaged the headline as a category. Procurement rewarded anyone who kept the category alive, because categories become cost centers and cost centers become careers. When corrections arrived, changing the label threatened to snap connectors in the schema. So the label survived. The science bent to the wiring. Then the appendix. The appendix is where the story turns. Buried after tables no one reads, a reanalysis listed functional variants near neuromodulator pathways and immune response loci. Ordinary biology, how nerves talk, how bodies flare and settle, sitting in a conserved regulatory neighborhood. That pattern rhymed with the NH-Δ7 constellation in modern assays. The same neighborhood that lit in Steppe and Andronovo horizons, and in Anatolian Neolithic layers, sometimes alongside rare C1A2 Y-line traces and K2 mitochondrial lines. Not destiny, not magic, continuity. So was non-human a lie? No, it was a shortcut that calcified. The tension isn't alien versus human. It's coincidence versus curation. Did those variants land in the appendix because the authors were thorough, or because decades of NH chatter nudged eyes toward that neighborhood? The leak can't answer. It shows people building scaffolding around a story until the building looks inevitable. For the program, the appendix didn't weaken the pitch. It rescued it. If you can point to an ancient motif near modern resilience signals, you can argue continuity without claiming inheritance. Non-Heritable becomes a legal bridge. The cluster crosses surnames, appears in strangers, and shows up in dig sites that make funders smile. The label invites a pivot. Stop asking what species, start asking what settings. The team that wrote the appendix sounded like scientists. Variants near neuromodulatory pathways, functional significance undetermined. In the copy that rode the audit, the last clause fell off. Functional significance arrived assumed. That's how a machine fills gaps, with motive and need. If planners want cohorts that return to baseline faster under neurotropic stress, and a table whispers about variants near pathways that modulate that baseline, the whisper becomes a green light. A reviewer's marginalia catches the mood. Next to a slide linking the ridge to NH-Δ7. Coincidence or selective memory? The presenter, contractor badge, blue lanyard said, both can be true. Either way the signal routes. Honesty disguised as cynicism. The audit didn't care whether the dig birthed the doctrine or backfilled it. The dig gave the audit a past tense. On the ground, the site was ordinary, wind, scrub, loess, a trench line chalked by students. One of them told us she almost cut the appendix table because it felt tangential. We thought no one would read it, she said. Instead, that table became a hinge. It let the program say, the motif isn't a lab ghost. It's in the dirt. The rebuttal, that the same dirt hosts every human story, doesn't fit into a bullet. Another irony,